Welcome to the 2020 crew reunion of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1973. I'm going to give a little introduction, and then I'm going to introduce the distinguished members of the crew that we have with us tonight. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre this is not widely known, but it was the most financially successful film in the history of Texas. It's a film that's still shown in every country of the world. It's a film whose innovations have continued to influence the horror genre for the last 45 years. It was made for $60,000, raised by an Austin politician, filmed mostly in and around an old Victorian house in Round Rock, Texas, with a crew that used exactly two vehicles, a Chevy van for the film equipment and a broken down 1964 Dodge Travco motorhome for the actors' dressing rooms. And the result was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The very title of the movie over the next few decades became cultural shorthand for perversity, moral decline, and especially the corruption of children, because Congress people always use it as an example to call for the censorship of television, even though it was never shown on television in those years. But its pure intensity, its startling technique, and its reputation as an outlaw film brought praise from a group as diverse as Steven Spielberg, a great admirer of the film. The Cannes Film Festival recognized it. The inmates of the Pennsylvania State Penitentiary were especially fond of it. Martin Scorsese loved the film. Travis Bickle watches the film in Taxi Driver. The Museum of Modern Art had praise for the film. Paul McCartney loved the film. Almost every metal band of the past 40 years has loved the film. And the Colombo crime family of Brooklyn especially liked the film because they ranked it right up there with Deep Throat as one of their major sources of income in the 70s. The film itself is a strange, shifting experience because early audiences were horrified by it. Later audiences sometimes laughed at it. More sophisticated audiences were both horrified and laughed at it. But newcomers to the movie were always made strangely uneasy by the atmosphere of the film. And in the days before the internet, you might have gone to the film and thought it was actually made by a maniac. But the story behind the film is even more, perhaps more interesting than the film itself. With us today are Ron Bozeman, the production manager of the film, who would go on to make Ron, you would go on to make both of the greatest Ed Gein-based stories in history, because you also accepted the Academy Award for Silence of the Lambs as the producer of that film many years later. Daniel Pearl is with us, the cinematographer on the film, who would go on to a spectacular career as a cinematographer in Los Angeles, maker of countless music videos, countless films. Larry Carroll, the editor of the film, who also worked on The Hills Have Eyes and other films that the horror audience would be very familiar with. Ted Nicolau, the location sound recordist, also known as a director, directed Terror Vision and the Subspecies series of films. And Wayne Bell, assistant location sound, and also worked on the musical score with the director, the late Tobe Hooper. And who am I leaving out? Is that everybody? And Kim Hinkle is back with us again tonight. Kim Hinkle, the writer of the film and director of the best sequel, which had many names, but I know it as Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was I would never call it Texas Chainsaw 4, Kim, because you ignored 2 and 3, thank God, and finally made a good sequel about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're going to. I should also mention before we start playing the film that two of the principal crew members have passed away. But we should recognize them, and if we have an opportunity to note their influences as we're watching the film, we should. And one is Bob Burns. I think his credit was set designer, but I think he should get more credit than that. I think he was the production designer on the film, and actually used his own collection of human bones and skeletons and animal carcasses and whatever went into the making of those creepy atmospheres in the film. He passed away in 2004, and Dottie Pearl, who did the makeup on the film, passed away in 2018. And so
Sally Richardson as well.
Oh, and Sally Richardson, who was the still photographer on the film, and I think actually went to a slaughterhouse and did a lot of stills of images in the slaughterhouse. Is that correct, Kim?
Absolutely.
Maybe some of those images used in the subliminal part of the beginning of the film.
She was also part of the editing too.
Yes, she was also worked in post too.
Okay. Everybody was wearing a lot of hats on this film, and so. But I know Dottie was very
This is Joe Bob. I
instrumental.
don't know if you guys can see this, but a picture of Sally Richardson on the set.
Toby originally wanted Dottie to play the part that Terry McMinn got. And she didn't want to be an actress. She said she wanted to be a makeup artist. And
Dottie,
it wasn't easy, but she landed a job.
Yeah. And I think Dottie had a degree in anthropology, right?
That's correct.
And so all of the cast and crew had all these intellectual distinctions. I mean, Gunnar Hansen was an editor of a poetry journal, and everyone had these advanced degrees and things. So anyway. Without further ado, I think we should start the film. And guys, just pitch in with your observations, and I'll try to guide the discussion with some questions about all of the many outstanding technical things that were done with very little money for a film that's 5 decades later is still watched all over the world. So, having said that, let's start the film.
The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young, but had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them,
So Kim, this is you and Toby crafted these words. You and Toby did, Kim?
Yes. Yeah. As I said, we were trying to, it's supposed to be, kind of pompous and overblown, but and we never thought anybody would take it seriously, as the film was really factual. So we were surprised that the way Bryanston initially promoted it. I think they, to some degree, thought that it was, in fact, a true story.
I still get mail from people telling me that they know the real place that it happened and the real family and the real person that did it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, often
okay,
I
Wayne.
lie about it myself, anyway.
What does that sound, Wayne? That sounds like a cat or a piece of metal.
The music is mostly cymbals at that point.
Okay.
So those of you who were there, do you guys know, were they using actual flash bulbs, or were they, because it seems like the attack is and decay is faster than a tungsten light would be.
I'm not sure. Dane and I remember for certain, but we might have used some, like flash bulbs.
Yeah, I think it looks that way. And then there was a shot of one going off.
Yeah.
Probably overcranking too to make it last a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Levi Isaac's voice there. He went on to
Really?
be a great cameraman and
Yeah.
is the treasurer of the American Cinematography Society.
Yes, he is.
He had a history started off as a newsman, as so many people did.
Huh.
And
Yeah, he and I actually worked together at a place called Southwest Educational Development Laboratories. I was an illustrator and he was a photographer.
I see him every year at our ASC annual gathering.
I traveled all over the Orient with him on some documentaries.
What is this an image of, Wayne?
Sunspots.
Or Daniel? Sunspots, okay.
Yeah, Ron can tell you about them.
Health officials in San Francisco reluctantly admit they may have a cholera epidemic on their hands. Some 40 cases of the highly infectious disease have been confirmed. It's believed that emergency thus far.
I've asked you, Kim, about the spooky astrology subtext, but you're being mum about exactly how pertinent it was to the overall narrative here.
Well, yeah, it was a strange mix of who Toby and I were there, so in a way, the things you're hearing over the radio are a little bit more telling from my perspective than the astrological things, but they were markers along the way. They were like what is drawn along the pathway to lure the traveler along.
So something is causing strange events in Texas, and we don't know whether it's supernatural or whether it's a crime wave caused by something else.
That was my van that was used as the picture vehicle. Later, I couldn't even sell it as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre van.
Really?
Yeah.
You could
now I
definitely sell it today, Ted.
No
You
kidding,
certainly
man.
could sell it today.
John Dugan, I think, the blue pickup in the inn belonged to my wife, Paula. Is John Dugan, Grandpa's sister. And he owned it, I think, till the end of its life.
Wow.
Daniel, are you lying in the weeds here?
I
Are you
am.
lying in the weeds to get this shot?
I am
About to get peed on.
Not right yet, but at the bottom of the hill, definitely.
This was the day they took my back seat out of the van to accommodate the wheelchair and lost it on the side of the road.
Who remembers it?
Right, I
Did we
forgot
start
about
this?
that.
Is this some of the first stuff we shot? Does anybody know?
I feel like that was maybe one of the first days of shooting out on the road. There was that dead horse nearby that stunk to high heaven and sort of set the tone for the rest of the movie.
I am down in that previous shot, low and wide, which becomes...
This was just plain old-fashioned backyard roll down the hill, buddy.
That low and wide angle becomes something we repeat quite
Now,
often.
again, Daniel, this looks like a pretty cramped space. Are you crammed into a corner of the
We sure
of the
are.
van?
I'm in there. Toby's in there, Ted's in there, and the cast's in there, and that's it. And then once Ed Neal joins us, then it becomes yet another person. So I guess it's 8 becomes 9.
It was crowded, and I'm happy to say I don't think any lines had to be ADR'd, no dialogue replacement in here.
Because our lab was in Dallas, I think is that right, Ron? The dailies were coming from Dallas rather than using the lab.
That's right, the Dallas lab, I forget.
And so it was several days turnaround, and I shot inside the van without lights, and we finally get the film back, and we're going, why are we even driving around? You get so blown out, you can't even tell that we're even moving sometimes.
Yeah.
Were you actually moving? Was the van actually moving while you were
all the time.
doing those shots? Okay.
Nice weather for it.
I understand it was 90 to 100 degrees every day, right?
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah.
This angle blew my mind when Toby came up with this. He leaned over backwards to us. It was like, that's where I first realized we're doing something very different here.
And all of this stuff at the beginning is just to create an atmosphere of dread. Were you guys talking about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know how much we were talking about it, but I think we all understood that was...
We didn't even have any lights. It's all just available light in there. Just, good exposures and available light.
That's amazing. There was no reflector in there at all?
I don't think, maybe you had, do you think I had a piece of foil? I don't even think I did. I don't think I had anything.
I guess you had minimal depth of field here, too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is this where you went to get the initial images of is this where you went to shoot the actual slaughtered cattle?
I don't think it was the same place. I think it was a different place.
Yeah.
This was a slaughterhouse, a feedlot north of Hillsboro, Texas, I think.
Right, rather than a slaughterhouse.
It's a feedlot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a long way from home base when you did this, when you did that shot. Do you recall, Daniel, how many days you guys were in the actual interior of the van?
I think we're in it for 2 days. Ted, you got an idea on that?
Yeah, it seems like that was right, yeah.
But it was 2 whole days, I think.
And the windows had to be closed, right, too, for the sound.
Yeah, because
So it was super hot.
It's also a great
This is a good
composition.
shot, man.
This is a wonderful shot.
Yeah, this is also something new that hadn't been done at the time. People tended to put the horizon more in the middle of the frame. And Toby wanted it right down there at the bottom. It's really smart, really good.
You get that sense of Texas big sky, you know.
It makes the shot special, Otherwise, it would have just been a boring old shot, but it makes it something very special.
Clearly in the middle of nowhere.
When Ed Neal shows up in the scene, suddenly we realized we were making a movie that was about insanity. And I can't meet Ed Neal at a convention now without being a little scared of him.
Is this all handheld, Daniel?
Yes, it is. Well, some of it's most of it's handheld, but occasionally on a fluid head and a hi-hat. But it's a lot of handheld.
And the van is still moving as you're.
Yeah, you can see the trees going by there slightly outside the window.
New way people put out of jobs. You do that?
Yeah, we weren't smart enough to do it any other way but the hard way.
When I did the remake, I did that totally differently and fixed that problem.
The original title of the movie, Head Cheese.
And cheese?
Yes.
The first script, I think.
Always a working title, though. As was Leatherface, really.
Did you have any conscious ideas about how you were shooting Ed Neal? I guess obviously shooting him from below.
Well, I think it gets set up with that shot across the side of the wheelchair. The shot here probably sets it up, and we just probably pushed in from there.
I think this is the cleanest image I've ever seen of it, you know. It just doesn't look as dirty as it usually does.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, well, it's that new transfer that Toby did for the 40th anniversary.
Where's the grain? There's like
I don't know how he got rid of it. It's gone. It's nuts.
that's part of the charm of the movie was the grain.
A lot of people feel that way about it. Yeah, people.
It's also what made the movie scary. You know, part of what made the movie scary.
All that rawness that, you know, look, I have to admit that some of that has to do with, I was 23 years old, right? So I was super raw. The technology that we had at the time was not anything near like what we have today in terms of lights, speed of lenses, etc. So a lot of this, the look of this film is quite documentary in style because we had to drive light in order to get stuff lit.
Yeah. What we worked with was very primitive, relatively speaking, and I really liked what we did with the light.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives it a documentary feeling, which also helps the believability.
Were you close to Toby, Daniel?
I had never met Toby prior to being hired on. Well, I bumped into him one time at the lab in Austin, but didn't really know him. He wanted to have a solution to how to shoot fluorescent lights, and I told him that you could use a 30 magenta filter and it would take the green out. But I don't even know if he remembered that was me. I know from Gunner's book that he saw a film that Ted and Larry and I did for the Department of Public Safety. It was a drug bust film that Gunner said that Toby saw that led him to us.
What was he doing? Why were the DPS showing him a drug bust film?
I think Toby saw it at the lab.
They're running the prints from the lab.
Did Toby give very specific instructions?
Did we make that film even before Chainsaw? I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah. Cinema Verite at that time was all the vogue, with various and sundry, what was it, Medium Cool, Marshall McLuhan, Blowout, all of that. So it was very much on our minds.
There was
an approach. Go ahead,
there was a moment that we discussed shooting in 35 millimeter, but Toby absolutely wanted us to be able to shoot handheld. And there were very few 35 millimeter cameras at that time. Both the Panaflex and the Arri BL were relatively new, and a small budget like ours could not afford to be one of the people that had them. So we were 16 millimeter.
But just because of the size and the weight of the camera?
It's a big deal. Yes.
Yeah.
So also that's what Toby had been, all the filmmaking he had been doing up to that point for the film house and the Peter Polam area. He'd gotten really good at doing handheld and the art of moving the camera just enough when you're walking with it, and so he was really in love with it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Did he give you very specific instructions, Daniel, about what images he wanted?
Sometimes he did. What's interesting is that this is before the days of video assist, meaning that only the camera operator was the only person that actually saw exactly what was going down. At times he'd be very specific in his instructions, very specific about the compositions, and other times it was more just a logical progression of where we already were going with the scene, how we composed it, and shots we made with it. But we talked a lot about how the composition system. We realized that was a very important aspect of the picture.
Who was doing all those blood effects on Ed Neal when he was cutting himself? And
that would have been Dottie. And Bob Burns rigged up the knife.
Bob Burns, yeah.
But Dottie was mixing up the blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're back in the weeds here, Daniel.
Yeah. We do a lot of foreground. Long lens and foreground. We like it.
Yeah. Another beautiful shot that shows something about all those telephone poles. It shows you're going into a scary place. I don't know why, but just
yeah, they're kind of low. Some of those telephone poles.
They look like a cemetery in a way with a
yeah.
So I think they that's what they do. How they work.
That highway no longer exists.
Is that right?
It's mostly taken over by Loop 130 around the north side. Covers most of that ground between Pflugerville and Hutto, which is where most of that scene was shot.
Wow. That was like the way outskirts of Austin back then, yeah.
Well, here's this wonderful guy.
That's Robert Corton. Yeah. This is a famous gas station in Bastrop. It's become a tourist attraction for horror tourism.
Well, is it open, like selling barbecue?
They sell barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. and they have a gift
cheese.
shop. And there's some cabins out back where you can stay the night if you would like to.
Yeah, every 8 months or so, I get an invitation from the owner to stop by.
This is a wonderful scene that establishes the menace of the environment without really telling us anything about it, other than these images.
How wide a lens did you have, Daniel? Because there's a lot of wide shots here that seem...
We had an 8mm Zeiss was our widest. We had a 9.5 to 95 zoom that was the workhorse lens. And when we wanted wider effects, we went to the 8mm. And then we also had a 12 to 120, another sort of standard 16mm lens. And a collection of my Nikkor prime lenses that we use with the C-mount adapters, where we got the fast lens for the night work, 50, and also the 200mm that we used a lot.
Wow. He was so good, man.
Yeah, right.
Like another insane person.
Love that business.
He's warning them off.
How did you find this place, Kim? I mean, it looks like everything, even for 1973, it looks like everything is 40 years old.
You know, I don't really recall specifically. Ron, do you have any memory of how we tracked this place down? It really was a cool place. We've got some behind-the-scenes stills we'll share at some point. Sitting around drinking Dr. Pepper and. Yes.
Were they open for business, and did they really sell barbecue?
You know, they were open for business, but I don't remember about the barbecue. There was some picnic tables out around one side of it, and I don't know if people sat out there eating or not. I just can't quite remember. Any of you guys recall?
the vibe of this place reeks of Bob Burns. Like it might have been his favorite place to eat or something, you know.
Well, it's just a little outside Bastrop, not very far outside of Bastrop. So, you know, a little two-lane highway kind of deal.
Man, I can already see like dents in my car, my brand new van.
It was brand new?
It was pretty new. I just got it for graduating University of Texas. My fucking mirror is off of it too. Oh, man.
I owned a slightly smaller version of the same van, and that was chosen to be the grip truck.
Bumpers
One of the
not in
bigger one
great
to
shape
shoot
back
it.
there. Either.
Yeah, my bumper's fucked up too. What the hell were you guys doing?
It seems like you guys shot a lot of film because there's a lot of cuts in all of these scenes. A lot of angles, a lot of close-ups, even in a scene like that.
Definitely, Toby wanted
correct?
no shortage of film.
I mean, that's hard, like to shoot a scene with that many characters in it without having to cover it like crazy too. And to be stuck in such a little space and have so many people.
Miserable, yes, tough. Very tough.
Kim or Ron, do you guys reckon this was the first week that we shot? Is that right?
Yeah, it was pretty on the first week, because didn't we shoot that first week, first day or so? We shot inside the old stone house that was across the street from.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
think
that's
so.
my memory. Yeah, yeah.
That's where day one was in the old stone
Yeah,
house.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
This is another beautiful shot of
Those
the
daddy long legs. Yeah. Oh my God.
arrival
This
at
scene we're
the
coming up on.
spook house.
This spot right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, once we move inside here, it's the first day of shooting.
Right. On the Union shoot, it had been illegal for us to even enter the building.
It was?
No, I'm being facetious, but I mean,
Oh,
we
okay.
just walked in and did whatever we want. We didn't ever give a single thought to the fact this place might collapse on us.
What was it before it fell into disrepair? Do you know?
I think it's one of
was
those
it a
German
house?
farmhouses.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks too big to be a house.
Here we are back in the weeds again.
It's like those houses you find around Fredericksburg.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a house, but it was definitely formidable.
Mr. Marcus Oro, he's gonna get you.
Why don't you wash it off, okay? I want to show you inside. Jerry!
Hey, wait a minute.
If you had put the satanic markings back on your van, Ted, you probably could have sold it more easily.
Yeah. You know what? That van was cursed ever after. I loaned it to another production at the university, and they hit a cow with it. So that poor van stunk of dead cow forever, too.
As I recall, we were an inordinate number of deaths of animals during the course of this whole shoot. You mentioned a dead horse earlier, and good Lord.
Yeah, no, the smell of corrupt flesh was everywhere on this film.
That's true. That's true.
This place was really spooky.
Yeah, I see. Even though this is a lot cleaner than I expected, the light's beautiful, Daniel.
Is this
And you didn't
natural
even-
sweat on everyone? The faces are all glistening in the light.
And all the spiders were already there. We didn't have to wrangle spiders.
Look at the zebras. Adding fascination for the zebras.
Franklin steals every scene that he's in. Paul Partain.
Sometimes with a little help from the environment. Oh, yeah, he's wonderful. Almost Toby would have a crippled man struggle as endlessly as he does here. Oh, Lord. He is something.
Gentlemen, excuse me 1 second. I'll be right back.
And he had a great face. His face is just full of rage all the time.
It seems like part of the greatness of this movie, too, is that the faces are faces of real people, not like beautiful movie star faces.
That's very true.
Come on, Franklin. It's going to be a fun trip.
Sorry, I'm back.
That's Toby loving the... That's Toby loving the raspberries so much that he kept telling him to do more of them.
Yeah, I recall that, too. Yeah.
Toby would push an actor, and then, to a limit, and then push him even more. You get that craziness. What would you like to write with him, Tim?
Well, what we really did was, work out, the scenes, in detail. We knew pretty much exactly what we wanted to happen, and then I'd go off into the kitchen and write them up and bring them back into him, and kind of our criteria for whether they're working or not, if I could keep him chuckling.
Well, that's the first magic in this film was that the crazy script.
Yeah,
It was all there in the script,
had fun with it.
Well,
When I read it, I realized what a golden opportunity it was for me to be asked to work on it.
This is Bob Burns imagery going on here. Things that have strangely upsetting shapes, but you don't know what they are. How were you miking these scenes like this one where people were frolicking?
Wayne?
That was a boom there.
Yeah, Wayne was basically had the boom mic somewhere. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was all lavaliers only in the van, and the rest of it was all boomed.
So he must have been pretty far away to get the sound on this one.
Somewhere, right, wherever we could fit it, right. It looked like maybe there's a boom over there to the right of the frame. As a matter of fact.
Oh, there he is.
That was a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, well, we were shooting in very tight spaces and with a lot of actors, and Wayne had to find a place to fit himself in.
Yeah,
it was always
tight spaces and wide-angle lenses. It wasn't easy for Wayne.
It was mostly a one microphone film. I mean, except for the van.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing,
And so you're following along under the camera lens on those walking scenes?
A variety of places. It was always a bit of a dance, whatever it was, which was very fun, actually. I had a great time doing it.
It's great the use of foregrounds, kind of blurred out foregrounds in this film too.
Well,
so much shot on it.
Fortuitous things to have.
I thought this was a brilliant use of sound because when I first saw the movie, I thought, oh, there's the first sound of the chainsaw. It turns out not to be the chainsaw, but because of the title, you hear a sound like that, and you think,
oh, yeah, you're waiting for it, yeah.
Yeah, you're waiting for the chainsaw, and then you hear this, you know.
Up, there's my Volkswagen.
It was all the crew cars. That was Dottie's and mine. The other Volkswagen belonged to us.
I don't know why we did it quite that way. We talked about having just, car antennas sticking up out of the ground. And about, the kids walking past and bumping into an antenna and a radio coming on, playing down under the ground. But anyway, I don't know why we didn't do that.
It's more expensive.
We had to park the crew car someplace, I think.
There you go.
This is the first shot of the house. I guess this is the establishing shot of the house, right? Mm-hmm.
Only Bob Burns.
Some really dramatic camera angles, like a lot of really good shots in this film.
And was that kind of to keep the audience off balance, Daniel?
It's just the way we were thinking about shooting it. It's a lot about stacking things up, lining things up. It's a continual theme, using a wide-angle lens and lining up the elements that are important in that part of at that moment. So he's up on the porch for a high angle over him to shoot down and include Terry in the shot at the same time. It's funny because we kind of did our compositional stacking with wide-angle lenses. Normally you stack things up on longer lenses, but we did it on wide lenses.
And when you were on the interiors of the house, people would go in and out of the light. Was that intentional?
I wish I could say so. The lights at this time still have not received anything brighter than a 2,000 watt light. So we didn't have a lot of light to use, and trying to illuminate it as best we could, but it was not much to work with. And in these daylight scenes, we also had to use a gel to turn the light to daylight color, which took away about 2/3 of its intensity as well. Now the shot that's coming up here this is a story I got to tell, because we're shooting out to a shot list, and we were supposed to move on, and I had this idea to make this shot, and I explained it to Toby, and of course he realized right away what a powerful shot, what a powerful moment it would be in the film. And we got into a bit of a hassle. At first we were told we were not allowed to shoot it, and to my recollection, Toby said that he was the director and I was the cinematographer, and maybe we wouldn't be tomorrow, maybe we'd be fired. But right now, the shot is too good, and we're going to make it.
Who said you couldn't shoot it?
Ron, was that you, by any chance?
Ron, are you there?
It wouldn't have been Ron. The only person who might have presumed to say that would have been Bill Parsley.
No, okay. Well, I don't think so. I think it was, I do believe it was, when was Sally? It was, in my recollection, it was whoever was the AD. So.
Oh, okay. Or maybe Terry didn't want the butt shot, or did she even know that's what it was?
I don't know. There's something.
It wouldn't have been Sally.
Okay.
It's one of the most frequently reproduced shots in the whole film.
I've been told by people that when a shot starts, now the whole audience applauds at the beginning of the shot.
This is Bob Burns' genius. He puts a chicken in a cage, and it's scarier than anything else in the scene, and we don't know why. Chicken in a cage doesn't sound very scary, but it is.
What's interesting about the way this scene was shot is this is Toby and I passing the camera back and forth. He'd have a go, I'd have a go, he'd have a go, I'd have a go. And that's how that searching around the room came about.
It's funny, even years later when Burns lived in Los Angeles, he would go to garage sales, and first thing he'd ask the people selling was, "You got any bones?"
I suppose I could tell the story now. Dottie had worked for a vet, and rather than burying the animal carcasses as he was being paid to do, he threw them all in a big pile on a ranch. And Dottie took Bob and Mary Church out there, and they scavenged up a bunch of bones, and in fact even got a few animals that required formaldehyding during the course of the movie that were up in Grandpa's attic.
I remember that.
Some recently deceased animals.
And of course, the sound is very complex here also. You have any memories of that, Wayne?
The music is really important here, and of course the music is so abstract it's hard to call it music, but that's really what it is. Famous shot coming up here.
I mean, what's so powerful about this is that this is where you realize this man is powerful. You know,
My wife was doing the catering on this film, and she would bring our 2-year-old daughter to the set, and she would come and say hello to everybody. She ran into this scene as we were shooting.
Whoa. Oh, wow.
And started screaming and ran out.
Who did the technical aspects of the meat hook?
That was Bob and Dottie put that together between the two of them. The harness that was able to hang Terry. She had a very skimpy wardrobe, and so they took basically a parachute harness and cut it down and cut it down and cut it down until they got something that could fit under her wardrobe. There's one single strap that goes up the back with an O-ring at the top of that, and as you see her approach the hook, we're from behind the hook, and then we cut around the front. She's already threaded onto the hook. The hook's turned the opposite way, so he's able to bring her down with a lot of force, and you see her just shake as that hook is basically what you imagine is now pierced and hooked her into her body.
Very effective, because most people claim that they think they see the hook go into the body.
I know they do. People
so
think
effective,
that.
yeah.
Shortly after I moved out to L.A., the film was having a screening down at the Newark. That was like when we first getting to be sort of a hip thing. And I read this review, and they were talking about things like that, the meat hook going in, and limbs being sliced off, and intestines flying, and I thought, wait, I know there's nothing like that in the film. I said, did the distributor go back and shoot some inserts? So I went to see the film, and that's when it really hit me, the thing that all of that was so well staged and so implied that you would swear that you saw the hook go in or a limb cut off, but it was just really beautifully done. In fact, it was so effectively done. And
Toby talked to me at great length about this kind of thing, that he decided that we didn't need to actually show the horror, that if we took the people right up to that point and didn't show it graphically, which we couldn't at that time anyhow, we didn't have the technology, but he was convinced and convinced me that it would be scarier if we let the audience fill in the blanks. Literally, he said, everybody will scare the shit out of themselves better than we possibly could if we showed them something.
He was having a problem too with Parchment. They wanted to get a PG-13 or an MA rating.
Oh, God.
I said, Toby, they're cannibals. It's an automatic arm. Don't they realize that?
I love this scene where we're walking with the lens flares popping in and out. This is very today, the behind and the sun popping in and out of the frame.
Sally, did you believe in all that stuff that Pam was telling about Saturn and retrograde and all that?
I really thought Paul was a good actor. He was a despicable character, but he did a great job of that character.
Yeah, it was kind of fun, to put kind of working at odds with the character you would think would be most sympathetic, the one in the wheelchair, and he's released.
Was Paul involved in the
That's how you
cast?
know that the acting is good, is he made a handicapped character, the character you despise the most.
Yeah. Was Paul involved in the cast reunion you did last night?
Yes.
Paul passed
Oh,
away.
no, excuse me. Paul, no. Yeah, no.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Paul passed away just a few years ago, just recently, but he had participated in a few horror conventions where they did have cast reunions. He left acting shortly after this and was executive in some kind of aerospace company or something. Then came back into acting like years later, did a few roles.
Wow.
A lot of these actors were associated with the University of Texas Drama Department, and many of them continued, some of them did not. I don't recall the colors being this beautiful when I first saw the film.
No, it's all about this the 40th anniversary.
Like on this scene, is that the white on that paint just seems to glow.
Was this actually shot in the late afternoon, or was that a big cucularis on the wall?
That's the sunlight on the right, but I'm seeing a shadow. I'm actually lighting this, but I don't know what the hell I had that was bright enough to do it. I can't imagine how I'm doing it, but I could tell by the shadows that what you're referring to as a kook is actually, and this is the morning light. It was the morning that hits the house like this.
And that shot through the dirty screen door is also beautiful.
Yeah.
Come on out. Come on.
Well, whether it was intentional or not, I think the actors walking in and out of the light in that foyer makes it spookier.
Absolutely.
So that's score, Wayne? That is the score?
Really
What were you using? What kind of...
What are those sounds?
That's not a short answer, actually. A lot of children's musical instruments, cymbals, which I brought, and a big stand-up bass that I had that we tortured happily and mightily every way we could think of to get all kind of sounds out of it. And I've forgotten that one lasted that long. Kitchen implements, pots and pans, But
And I assume those are the sounds of the disordered mind of Leatherface.
right.
Yeah.
This is children's cymbals rubbed together at like a 3/4 speed. So, from a children's band set,
Wow, man. It's very effective.
Didn't we see this? Weren't you with Daniel and I did? I thought you did too. We did the 4K version. We did a commentary.
I think it was before the 4K. Or was it the 4K?
I think it was the 4K.
6 years ago?
Yeah, that was a few years ago. Yeah.
No, I think it was the metal, the one that came out in the metal cassette, the metal box.
I think you're right.
And then for the 40th anniversary, I don't think there's a new one.
It's funny, even though you couldn't really light the whole.
Wasn't that the 4K?
That was the 4K, yes, the 40th anniversary.
This stuff looks great.
There was another. Toby had regraded the film twice, in my recollection.
When was the first occasion?
The earlier one? I think it was for the first DVD, I think.
Yeah, well, I think I just remember that print was a really good-looking print. I mean,
Maybe it was.
It didn't have the.
But it would have been 6. I guess that sounds about right because it was 6 years ago.
And Larry and Daniel, this is one of the. This shot is unlike almost every other shot in the film because it's one continuous long take. I mean, that take just went on for like 2 minutes. The rest of the film, not really done like that. But
Yeah, was that a scheduling issue or was that like intentional?
There was a lot of coverage on everything, really.
I was going to say, Larry would know the answer to that.
Yeah. There was,
it was a beautiful shot. So maybe it was just because it
was all in one piece. But everything else was done in lots of pieces.
Yeah.
What's crazy is this flashlight is a 650 watt bulb in it. It would burn you if it touched you. Today we just use flashlights. We could light with phones. We could light with candles. But in those days, it's got a big battery belt hidden somewhere in the chair to drive it, and it's.
It's kind of cool that you didn't have the lights to light deep into the background because this is more like what it looks like when you're out in the wilderness at night.
Very realistic. It's also a lot scarier.
Yeah.
You can pick up little highlights and stuff back over there, and you can see it. They're basically going into the valley of the shadow of death.
Stock footage, or did you guys shoot this?
I did shoot a moonshot. It was the very first shot that Toby had me make before we even started shooting. Principal photography.
Mm-hmm.
And are you on a track here?
Yes, we
Daniel?
are. We laid our 60 feet of track in this forest, and we shot parallel with the actors, leading them, following them, off the right side, off the left side, every which way possible. We used the same track over and over and over again for almost virtually a whole night that we shot on the same 60 feet of track. And I was given.
The camera had a nice track to move on, but the wheelchair, I was over off terrain.
This looks like a nasty thicket-infested cocklebur.
Yeah, it's not a forest exactly. It's just a Brer Rabbit thicket. Yeah,
it's a nasty bit of mesquite thicket. Yeah, it was thorny too, if I remember correctly.
I think it was all mesquite, yeah.
And I got whacked on his dolly. Our dolly grip, Lynn Sherwood's, he could get me up to speed in 2 steps and could stop me in 1 step. So when we're doing the running stuff, which comes up a little bit of time here, at one point, I guess we got behind or somehow I had to pan further than normal. My elbow came off the. You should be talking about this instead. Excuse me. This is incredible. This is what we're talking about, where you don't see the graphic violence. What you see is Toby and Dottie spitting blood back at Gunnar as he's jabbing Franklin.
And then now we're beginning what must be one of the longest foot chases in film history. How many days were you guys, or how much time did you spend filming just the foot chase between
I believe it was a
Leatherface
couple of
and
nights.
Sally? Yeah.
There were some
Because
long
it just
days
takes
on the film.
Yeah.
all kinds of twists and turns, and
But Daniel, you did a brilliant job on all these night shots.
I'm sorry?
'Cause we had one.
I can't hear him. He's talking.
It's Ron here.
Yeah.
We had one 4K on a scaffolding. And he just shot one direction, then shot the other direction. And, it was so little equipment and so much results. It was just brilliant.
4Ks didn't exist yet, Ron. We had the two 5Ks and a 10K. Two 5s and a 10. It was the first time I'd ever seen them. I'd never seen anything bigger than a 2K. I thought I was a badass motherfucker. I thought I could burn this fucking town down with this shit. I mean, I really thought I was really had all the power in the world.
Just incredible how minimal your equipment
Yes.
was and how much mileage you got out of it.
Well, thank
All
you.
of this was
Thank
done
you. And
for-
it helps a lot, too, with the look that, but I had to be very direct with the light, as you see her running there. We're about to come up upon a shot that Toby knew he wanted as well here. Must be in another, she takes off again. It must be in a later part of the chase. I'm sorry.
I interviewed Marilyn Burns years later, and she still remembered all the injuries on her arms and from the number of times she was cut by those branches and.
But she knew nothing but 100% full speed. There was no ever slowing her down.
I'm surprised she could still talk after all the screaming she did in the film,
Which is the shot you're referring to, Daniel, that you knew Toby wanted?
It's coming up. I'm sorry. It's in a later part. The chase continues. It's once they get out of the house. It's in that part. I'm sorry. I didn't have exactly right where it was going.
And here's who did the makeup effects on Grandpa there?
There was a plastic surgeon, wasn't it? That guy.
Yes.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
Dr. Barnes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Walter Barnes.
Grandpa's really a young guy.
Right.
I wonder if anybody remembers if what's
The
known as the
plastic
beautiful
surgeon or
woman
John
mask.
Dugan?
Yeah, but I wonder if anybody knows if because I remember Dottie saying that she was actually had her face was cast, and I'm wondering if possibly her face was used as the basis for the beautiful woman mask. Does anybody know?
I don't know, yeah.
I do remember
I
it.
think that was Marilyn's face.
Do you think it was Marilyn's face?
Apparently, Dr. Barnes was somewhat of a character and had many beautiful women to choose from to make a mask.
I remember Dottie telling me about the experience of having to breathe through the straws and have, almost an hour in the gas for it to set.
And so you think the chase is going to be over in the house, but it's just a stop on stop on this journey.
Yeah, the shot I'm talking about that's coming up is a very long lens stacked up shot where Sally's running towards camera and Leatherface is chasing her, and he looks closer because of the long lens, and she looks like, although she's running, she's not really making any progress because of the long lens. You'll see it comes.
Right. Yeah,
It's
I
coming
always
up
loved
shortly.
that.
How were you lighting this?
with those 5Ks and the 10K.
A little tough to keep in focus, Daniel.
You know, I don't actually recollect how that happened, because I know, here, this is the shot I'm talking about right here.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the same bramble forest that we were in before, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
believe it
we're
was.
just back to the same lighting setup and
Right.
everything, yeah.
The scaffold in the
Here's
same
this is the
place.
shot. This is the one.
Oh, yeah.
That's that stack up shot. There it is again. It wasn't easy. That lens is a very slow lens. Took a lot of light to get that shot, that telephoto stack up shot. If I recollect properly, the first time that Marilyn came running into the shack, she started screaming. And I think she screamed for an entire roll of film, which is 11 minutes. I remember opening my eye, my off camera, my right eye was in the viewfinder, my left eye, and I'm looking around the room, trying to figure out what is going on. Are we gonna cut, or what? We did shoot until we rolled out.
Yeah, that was a rough night.
Sure was.
We were shooting that actually out at that location. I mean, this interior was at that location, and that was a rough, raw concrete floor. And as I said, we sometimes didn't do things very smartly, and it was really rough on Maryland.
It was very rough on Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah, it got pretty crazy. Bill Parsley was outside stalking me, telling me stories about dealing with young actresses. He was a character.
Bill Parsley, the $40,000 investor in the movie, was lobbyist for Texas Tech University. It's illegal to be a it's illegal for a university to have a lobbyist, but that's what he was. he was officially the financial officer, and I guess he was hanging around the set every day, right, Kim?
Yeah, and
He never left.
he was there quite a lot, but he just required a lot of attention. Somebody needed to be with him for him to talk to.
I remember that Marilyn used to go sit in his car. I guess now I realize probably for the air conditioning, we were all so jealous,
Well, now Marilyn says she was keeping him under control. She was. She said he every day he thought he was going to take the film back from these young whippersnappers.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I reckon he was an $80,000 investor. When Toby hired me, he told me he had $80,000 and needed $10,000 to get started.
Unfortunately, not true. We didn't have $80,000 to begin with. I wish we had.
This is kind of a new emotional point in the film where Jim Sedow turns from the only hope she has into her latest oppressor, and of the three members of the cannibal family, he's the one that's only half crazy. The other two are totally crazy, so it makes him more dangerous. And he said he had trouble beating up Marilyn and had to be directed several times to hit her harder.
I remember in the dailies, he was pulling his punches sometimes. It's hard. Call it pulling the punches or not.
Yeah, there's smarter ways to do it, but we didn't get there. But it certainly, had its effects, didn't it?
I hope none of you own this truck.
I don't recall. Do you guys recall? Ron, do you remember on this truck?
I don't.
Truck looks like it's from the 30s.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite moments when he has to turn out the lights to
Yeah.
save money.
It's just like the coming and going and coming and going. It happened when we were at the gas station the first time, when they was leaving after cleaning the windshield.
Yeah. There are all these comic moments in the film that were not noticed by the critics at all.
Lots of it, actually.
We laughed quite a bit during the making of the film. A lot of it we found humorous.
Yeah, there was a shot earlier of Leatherface chasing Marilyn, and she makes a turn, and he comes skittering after it and does very much like in a cartoon, kind of on one leg past her, and then makes his turn, Also, this is very Toby, this scene right here.
Yeah. She was actually in the burlap bag.
Yeah.
While he was poking her with the stick.
It's true.
She was.
Now, I guess we had Mary Church in the bag, our erstwhile stunt person.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it was Mary or not. I'm trying to remember.
I don't think so.
No,
the scream sounded like Marilyn.
Poor Marilyn.
And Mary did the stunt where she went through the window in the second story.
Through the window, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And this is processed, right? The vehicle isn't moving here?
This is poor man's process, yes. My first go at it.
Well, it came
Were
out
you
pretty
actually
well.
in the front seat there, Daniel?
Yeah, we went with the camera wherever it had to go. But the car's not moving. We're
Okay.
We're
And
totally.
the camera's mounted on the hood here?
Here it's handheld inside. It's just a telephoto lens from a dolly out in front. I had been, earlier in the evening, I had been outside on the porch probably having a cigarette, and I think that two cars came. I think Sally was delivering dinner for us. And two cars came, and the first one made start up the dust, and I saw the dust of the headlights of the second one. That's what inspired me to light this scene the way that I did. The headlights weren't bright enough for us, so we bolted two 1Ks, two 1,000 watt lights in place of the headlights, and asked Ed. You'll see Ed here. Well, if you'd seen it, I asked him to drag his feet to keep the dust kicked up. If you watch that scene, you'll see he's actually, in the course of his struggle, he's actually dragging his feet to keep generating dust for me.
It does look beautiful. Yeah.
Here comes the daylight in the background of this one, which is really nice what it does for the sky in that one.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those headlights.
That's one of the scenes I like a lot, because I just had this epiphany while I was standing out there going, oh my God, headlights, somebody kicks up the dust.
Yeah. Ed Neal was just wonderful here. They all were. How could you not find this funny? I just don't get it.
Look at what he did to the door.
I love that line. That's one of my favorite lines in the movie.
Actually, look at what your brother did to the door.
Look what your brother did to the damn door.
That line got reprised in Chainsaw 2 for what it's worth.
What was that line, Wayne?
About that. Well, look at what your brother did to the door.
Oh, yeah.
They're shooting a lot of this, Daniel, from overhead.
Yeah, we had a high handheld angle on it initially. Then we settled down and get more low into it here. high angles, low angles. We were mostly interested in odd angles. Just wanted to show the story differently. And actually, most of these interiors are lit with what was called photo floods, which were 250 and 500 watt light bulbs. And most of the stuff is shot during the daytime. And we have the windows blacked out, which is not helping. There's no ventilation in the house. And these light bulbs are very, very hot. Lighting to that light level requires a lot of heat as well, what we needed to shoot with this slow film.
Lots of bones.
More raspberries there too, by the way.
Yeah. I like this dolly shot a lot too, where you go and come back, take them.
Yeah, you have 3 rooms and a staircase all in this same shot.
Get back in there! Get in there!
It really is great looking, man. This is the best I've ever seen it also.
It really brings out Jim Sedow's performance because, I think in the original he was in the dark quite a bit in the last 5 minutes of the film, the last 5 minutes that we've watched.
What were you doing? Do we have a ladder in there, Daniel, that you were like able to get these high angle shots?
Yeah. The Eclair NPR, the 16 millimeter camera that we shot with, had a nice base plate that the cradle would sit into, or the cradle actually that the camera would sit into, but it had a nice front piece that you could put it up on a ladder top like that and lean it, and the ladder would hold it, and you could get a good handheld vibe without actually being on your shoulder.
Now, was the dinner table scene shot near the end of the whole shoot?
It was.
Yeah.
When everyone's probably tired.
I think we're shooting continuous at this point, weren't we, guys?
Pretty much.
The continuity, I mean, shooting the continuity.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit later before we started shooting continuously, but definitely when we got into the next part of this scene, after I think she comes to, maybe is when it really, got from there almost till the end, or at least till the end of that whole sequence.
Even when it's cleaned up, the color palette and the look of it is always filthy. Inside the house is grimy, filthy. You just feel like you don't want to touch anything in this space. And you certainly don't want to touch them.
Did the people that lived in this house come back and continue living in it, Kim, after the film moved out?
To the best of my knowledge, come to think of it, I don't know.
Didn't the house at one point wind up being a restaurant out near Marble Falls or something?
Oh, it still is.
Is it still
it's
is?
a restaurant in Kingsland, yeah.
Yeah.
Across the street from the Antlers Hotel. It's a restaurant. They don't make a big deal about it, but
oh, they don't?
You can have dinner. You can have dinner in the bone room.
Bone room. I was wondering about ladyfingers on the menu.
There was a guy named Rocky who lived there, and around the third day of shooting there, he said to me, he said, "You seem like somebody who might know what's going on. How long y'all gonna be here?" And I said, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And he said, "They told me it's only going to be 3 days." So he goes, "Well, I guess I'm going to have to tell you that I'm growing marijuana out back if you guys are going to be here that long." So he he told us that he had some marijuana growing back there, and asked us not to take too much of it.
So this is like the beginning of the 27-hour day, right? This is
You know,
marathon.
the problem with that was we only had one take on Grandpa, one makeup.
Man. Yeah, we had 3 in total, Ron, but we were on the 3rd. This was our last.
You were down to the end.
Yeah.
We shot a lot of pickups on this one in our old shootout offices. Remember, Daniel? We shot
Right, the close-up from
close-up stuff of
Maryland.
Maryland, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Abused her for, it seemed like a very long time that night.
Enough to get her very red-eyed. But then she got abused a lot during the course of the shoot.
She sure did.
Yeah. All these shots from Marilyn's point of view are scary and funny at the same time.
Yep.
But they're only funny when you watch the film the second time.
Well, as I recall, Toby thought just about everything was hysterical.
He did. It was a comedy.
He really thought
For him.
He found the humor in all the scenes.
Well, when we were writing it, it was kind of our criteria that if I kept the chuckle, it was okay.
Yeah, I think.
I love that line too, where he says, "I take no pleasure in killing." It's just what we got to do. These screams ought to be put in the Library of Congress or something.
Oh my God! This was like recording screams for about 2 weeks for the end of the movie.
Sell everything that's going on.
Was that close-up stuff, Kim, the stuff you guys got at Shootout?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's another iconic shot. It's frequently used of Jim Seedow cackling.
He was such a sweet guy. You never know what was in him.
I was never clear on what the cook's relationship to the other two guys is, whether he was the father or the uncle or the brother or exactly what. What was he, Kim?
Well, there's some things like that I'd rather leave a little murky.
Okay.
I think what he means is he was all of those things.
Okay.
I'm your father, I'm your brother, I'm your father.
Exactly.
So what, were we not able to get those, like the reverses on Maryland on that 27-hour day, or you wanted tighter shots, Larry, to kind of make it work?
I think it really, well, you didn't get the kind of shots that Toby wanted. He felt we lost a lot of intensity in what we'd gotten on location, as I recall. He wanted to amp it up again.
Because those big close-ups are really effective. Yeah.
I think it's
very effective.
I think it's early in the days of eyeball photography as well.
Well, no, you had Sergio Leone by that time, so you had a lot of eyeballs. And that's when they want to give Grandpa the honor of the kill. I don't understand how people can watch this scene and still think doesn't have comic elements. Especially when Grandpa is obviously too weak to use the hammer at all.
And I think this is all like sync sound of her screaming, which was not really necessary either, you know.
Obviously, Toby wanted this to go on to excruciating levels.
For me, my big job was just to keep it from distorting.
Yeah. Mary Church.
Yeah.
I love this shot also, the quick dolly and a 200 millimeter
That was
lens.
cool, yeah.
And then this shot where she's...
I've tried to reconstruct our shooting timeline of this. This is, before the sun's broken the horizon. And I think that we may have shot this whole sequence in one morning. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, it was just one morning.
I think this was the long day.
The end of the long day?
I believe so.
Oh my God. We went
So it
from
was every
interior
morning.
to exterior in that day. Holy cow.
I think.
Once we shot out Grandpa, I think we stopped.
Yeah, that was the 26-hour day that had Grandpa in his final.
This is separate.
Right.
This is separate. Yeah.
And we were blessed with a cloudy day here, I think. Well, except some of it wasn't.
Do you still have the shooting schedule, Ron? Do you have the shooting schedule in your
No.
collection of stuff? No?
No.
Did you have to hire this truck for the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Ed Gwynn. Hey, Ed.
Big Win was it?
Wasn't it his cab? We
I
just
think
had
it
the
was.
adventure trail.
He owned the truck?
Was he? He was in a band. He was in Conqueroo.
Right. But
He
he
was
made a
also
living
a
as a
truck
trucker.
Truck, I think.
He also drove a truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the name on the door, the Black Mariah, that's the name of the first studio in Fort Lee, the first film studio.
Oh, yeah.
There was a bit of homage Toby was playing there. Okay, this is the only gore in the whole movie.
Is the only, yeah.
Steak.
And we put a piece of sheet metal around Gunner's leg with a brisket and a baggie with blood on top, fake blood on top of that. So the chainsaw actually goes down and is cutting through his pants, through the bag of blood and into the meat, but not cutting his leg because it's a piece of sheet metal. But I think it heated up pretty well on him.
Yeah.
That was Ron's job, was to make sure that we always had the right chainsaw, that we didn't have a dangerous chainsaw. Right,
Chainsaw
Ron?
Meister.
You were the keeper of the saw, weren't you?
I was.
Because you were the only responsible human being on the set?
They were good. You were
Is
going to
that the
trust the rest of us.
same? Are you using the same chainsaw throughout the movie?
We only had one,
We had more
I
than one.
think. But you could take the clutch out and it would run and make the noise, but not.
This
It
is
wouldn't turn the chain.
That's a beautiful
this
shot.
dance between Gunner and myself. At the very end of that shot, everybody came running over to see if I was okay. Everybody thought that I'd been hit by the chainsaw, and it's a fantastic piece of film that I got involved in what I was shooting through the wide-angle lens and didn't realize how close I was, because it was so intriguing what was going on that I just got totally into just, capturing it. Gunnar at the same time is worried that he's going to hit me because he got the mask on and he can't see very much. And so it's another one of the iconic sections of the film that people talk about all the time.
Were you guys aware of breaking a lot of rules when you made this? When you made the film, at the time you made the film?
You mean rules of common decency, or what kind of
yeah, well,
legal rules?
Legal rules? No, I think we got location agreements that we worked out anything. I think we just grabbed that cemetery. I don't think we made any.
Ron was very responsible. He was very good about getting all that stuff.
Somebody that I was reading on Instagram recently said that end scene would never be shot the way it was by a company that wasn't as crazy as we were because of safety concerns. They would not have allowed us to actually shoot that exactly the way we did.
And also, there was no real youth horror movement at the time you made this film. You kind of invented youth horror. Unfortunately, by the time the first sequel came out, there had been Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all kinds of other youth horror films. But I don't think people realized just how groundbreaking this film was at the time. And you probably didn't even realize it yourself, Kim, but
as I recall, we all figured we'd go to see the film on a drive-in sometime, or maybe be there at the old State Theater or something on Congress Avenue, and one of the movies comes in town and it's gone by the next week. And we were pretty clueless, period. But we had no real, it took a little while for it to sink in that we had done something so radically different.
And how did you feel the first time you saw it with an audience?
I think it took me seeing it with an audience several times, because you know the film, and watching the film and watching all of the production stuff. You see it with an audience when it's fresh for them and relatively fresh for you. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. I had friends who hated me for taking them to see it.
But they gasped in the right places?
Yeah.
They gasped in the places you thought they would?
Yeah, all the right places as well.
There's a question that I've been asked many times, I'm sure everybody else involved here has been as well. People always ask us if we knew that we were making such an impactful film at the time we made it. And we all can honestly say that we couldn't. Who would walk around thinking that you're making a film that people are going to be talking about 47 years later? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, now, some of the actors say that it was a resume killer. They eventually took it off their resumes because they were trying to get other jobs, and people would see that and think that it was low class. Was that true? Was that true of you guys as well, or no?
Absolutely.
The big difference was I found if I trying to call somebody, of course that was back in the day when it was like even the top executives only had one gatekeeper. But I could call somebody and they would say, well, looking for a job, and they said, well, what have you done? I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I said, really? You want to come by tomorrow?
Yeah.
You just opened doors right and left, and then just.
So it was opposite. It was considered a technical marvel, but it was considered morally reprehensible, I guess, for a long time. Very interesting.
A lot of the cast got very involved in wondering where the money was, and I think they were threatened a lawsuit. There may have been lawsuits. I mean, Toby and I actually were both, a couple of years later, found ourselves striking up a friendship in Los Angeles, and we would talk about that. Doesn't everybody get it that this credit is so strong? Why is everybody worried about making a couple of $1,000 or a couple of $100, whatever it was going to be? Why are they worried about that? Just go forward with this, and that's basically what most of us that you have on here did. We didn't get bogged down in it and get caught up in it.
For myself, it was the single biggest break I've had in my career.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing to have that as a calling card.
Unfortunately, no one will ever know exactly how much money it made because for about 12 years it was controlled by the Colombo crime family of Brooklyn.
We'll never know, but on the other hand, I'm always amazed when I get a check, and I tease people in the industry with this, and I say, I'm the only guy you're ever going to meet in this town that's actually collected on net points.
That is true.
That's true. That's true, but the net points started in 1982. The ones between 73 and 82 just vanished.
We actually
I think they really started later than that, but
Well, my recollection is we got money before it even hit the screen on the first $250,000 payment, wasn't there, Kim?
Yeah, Bill Parsley.
Yes,
got
we
it.
did, but for most people who had 0.5% or 1% or something like that, it was a pittance. Because you had to get your negative costs, and then the producers got their cut, and by the time it got back down to us, then there was very little left.
I was not given points. Nobody ever gets them.
I wasn't given anything for being a cinematographer. I was given a salary, but I wasn't given points. But I did find the last $10,000 that was necessary to get us going, and I was given points for finding the money. For a bunch of hippies, finding the money was the same thing as having the money.
Right. Well, gentlemen, it was great talking to you. It's a great achievement, and thank you for letting us in on some of the secrets of how it was done. And Ron, I hope you'll make a third Ed Gein movie one of these days. You can't have enough Ed Gein movies in this world.
We should all give a big thank you to Kim, who was Toby's right-hand guy and was, we wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for the work Kim put in it with Toby. You get to go.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys, but let's not forget to say thank you to Toby most of all.
Oh, yeah, of course. One of my regrets always was never really sat down with Toby and thanked him, not only just for the difference it made in my career, but also what I learned about filmmaking, and it was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Not many people get breaks like that.
And just to say one more thing about Toby, we were talking during the film about how there's no explicit violence in the film. It's almost all suggestion. There's almost no explicit gore at all. And when Hitchcock did that, he was praised for it. and when Tobe Hooper did it, the film was, for some reason, became a symbol of depravity. And I've never understood exactly why that occurred, other than the fact that, one movie came from Texas and another movie was made by an Englishman in Hollywood. But
the title.
I think he suffered unfairly for that title, which was invented by Warren Scarron, the head of the Texas Film Commission. I thought he suffered unfairly, for too long, because of a false reputation that the film had.
I think he captured insanity too perfectly, and the whole film has a kind of disreputable vibe to it that is what makes it so powerful too.
Yeah, it's as though you guys did your job too well, and the film was too real, and the cinema verite style of it was sort of before its time. So thank you all.
Thank you, Joe Bob.
Do you want to wrap it up just quickly, or do you want us to tell a couple other stories that we didn't get?
Go ahead, Daniel. I want to hear this. I want to hear every story.
Well, so something I'd like to mention that I just came across recently, because I've been, through Instagram, I'm seeing a lot of photos that people have in various collections that people dug up, and one of them is in his woods that we're shooting in at that night with our 60 feet of track. And I looked at the picture, and it's Sally is going, Marilyn's going back to 1. We're going back to 1 because my eye's not on the eyepiece, so obviously we're not rolling. And I looked at it and I went, wait a second, that is Leatherface is pushing a dolly. And Gunnar was, I went, wait, oh my God! First I saw the butcher's apron, and what I want to say is that Gunnar, he wanted the cast to be scared shitless, and so he didn't spend any time around them, really, unless we were rolling. He was either off by himself. I'm sure you guys all remember him being sort of just off on the periphery, or else he sometimes hung with us, the crew. But he was very careful, to make sure that he had as much impact whenever he had to scare them that he could.
Yeah, he was a sweet, intelligent guy. Really, yeah. Fabulous man, really.
He became a very good friend of mine after that. And in fact, for my honeymoon, we went to Boston and went to visit Gunnar in Maine. And so my wife gets to say that she spent her honeymoon at Leatherface's house. But he was a likable, very likable guy, even during the shoot, at least for me, since I wasn't in the cast. But the story he would always tell is the fact that they only had one change of clothes for him, and they didn't dare wash it. So that same outfit was the same outfit every day, getting more and more pungent as the shoot went on.
I remember that too. He did get kind of ripe. Another thing I'd like to mention that I didn't, because something that Toby had very specifically that he wanted is Bill Vale's sort of POV, where he looks up and sees Leatherface, and where we see Leatherface for the first time. And it was something that Toby knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to be a little bit of a squat, to rise up, to tilt up, and to zoom in at just exactly the right moment.
For the first kill of
it's the first kill, and it's the first time you get to see Leatherface, and it was not at all random. He knew exactly the shot that he wanted for it, exactly how it had to go.
And then he's forced to look up because he stumbles, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
I always thought the scary thing about that was the suddenness of the kill and how fast it's over.
Yes.
And so then you think anything is possible after that.
And it's such a great setup for the scene following. When she's out there waiting, and she's just sort of being impatient and want to go, and da-da-da, and she's walking in there, and the yard mistress saying, no, don't go in the house. And by that time, it wasn't a cliche at that time.
Right. Let me say one more thing about Gunnar. Gunnar is of Icelandic heritage. He's the only Icelandic American I ever knew. He was a scholar of Scandinavian literature and a very good writer himself, and actually wrote a couple of books, and was a very literate guy. And he once said to me in an interview, with a little bit of sadness in his voice, they're going to put "He was Leatherface" on my tombstone. and of course, when he died, the obituaries all began with, he was Leatherface, and so. But he didn't really regret it. He had later in his life he had sort of started to enjoy the fact that he was known for that, even though he should have been known for many other things that he was very good at.
Well, in truth, it was very profitable for him. He was the first to start to make these conventions and appear as Leatherface and do interviews and sell autographs and get paid to be there. So that was a major income source for him for a long time. And later, other chainsaw-related actors started to do the same thing from the sequels. But he was the one that really, made a living out of being Leatherface in a way. One of his books is about barrier islands, islands at the edge of time, and it's a very good book. He's a good writer.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Ron, before we wind it up. You obviously went to the pinnacle of the motion picture industry and have worked on, I don't know how many films at this point. You've produced, 30 films, 40 films?
No, not quite that many. But
okay, well, you've produced
a good number.
At least a couple of dozen big budget films. Do people ask you about Chainsaw? Do people know that's your start in the business?
A few people, it comes out over time when you're working together for, the length of a bigger feature. But, I don't hide it, and so I'm always happy to talk about it.
When they refer to it, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
A good thing. No, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a tremendous respect for this film, as rightly there should be.
Hey, one thing we didn't talk about, I wonder if, is the editing of the film. Larry, what was it like working with Toby in the cutting room? Because this movie was shot beautifully, but it was made in the editing room, I think.
Toby, every cut in that film was Toby's. It's like Toby pretty much knew exactly how things were going to come together, but he wasn't, he wouldn't, we took a lot of time in the scenes we cut together, and it was hard work, but it was enjoyable, and it also just took such a long time after shooting it and then doing post-production. I don't forget how long post-production lasted, but it lasted beyond me. So it was It was
it's a very complex. It's a very complex edit. I once went through it scene by scene, and it's almost every scene has. It's Hitchcockian. I go back to Hitchcock. It's Hitchcockian in the way it was put together.
The sound is equally so.
Yeah. So it's ironic that it was criticized by New York intellectuals and others for being the Andy Warhol people called it the pornography of violence, and there were all kinds of attacks on it. So it's ironic that a film that was that carefully done and that skillfully done got that reputation.
Does anybody recollect exactly how many days we shot? Was it as many as 30?
I want to say 28 myself.
No, I don't. We took a hiatus. We shot a few days and things were just
There's
not
a week,
on track. And what did you say, Ron? A week?
Yeah, I said a week, but what do you think, Ron?
What was lost to the lens?
No, when we started shooting, things were not going well, and we took a break. We kind of reorganized.
We took the break, but the lens, we had a bad set of lenses. And
my recollection is that
about 2 weeks, maybe.
I know there were several reasons, but what it meant to me, the shutdown, was that Toby was told to write a shot list, and that's where that struggle came about. And under the swing shot, that I showed up on the first day, Monday we were back, and set up the first shot on the shot list, and Toby showed up and he changed everything, and we didn't shoot anything on the shot list that day. And in thinking back about it, I think that production must have been so busy that we were starting back up. You had to rearrange everything and get everything going, even though we started shooting. But I think that y'all were quite busy just getting the whole show going again and rescheduled. And on the second day, the same thing happened. And on that third day, we were told, look, you're going to shoot the shot list, and that's it, nothing but it. And that's when I came up with this idea for the swing shot, and that's where the struggle came, is that we were finally supposed to be shooting the shot list, and we made it for a few hours, and we were deviating again.
Well, there was a lot of pressure from Parsley, who thought I don't know how old you were at the time, Ron, but the most of us were in our early 20s, and it's easy to say that how much experience did we have? That we're all to some degree making it up as we were going along.
none of us had had a ton of experience. So yeah, we weren't the well-oiled machine that one might imagine that you're going to have on making a film. But at the same time, we all had really good ideas that worked and all contributed to the success of the film.
Let me ask you about one more thing before we go on. Wayne, I mean, we didn't talk that much about the soundtrack, but how much of the soundtrack would you say was actual music as compared to just strange sounds that you guys came up with?
Well, purposefully, it treads the border between music and sound effects all the time, and that was by design, and that was something that both Toby and I liked. That when a sound effect becomes musical, or when a piece of music does the work of a sound effect. So that was on purpose, and we did it again 2 years later. Toby's next film, which was called had various names: Starlight Slaughter, Eaten Alive. Neville Brand stars in it, and so we did the same thing. I went out, loaded up my car full of musical instruments and recording gear, and went out and filled a bedroom full of stuff and created bizarre sounds once again. And unfortunately, we had a little synthesizer for that recording session, and we got slightly enamored with it. And the most interesting stuff from that movie and from the Chainsaw Score is the stuff that sounds the most organic. And so we purposefully never got too musical, but we always wanted to never get too real either with these sounds. And so we would just create a library of sounds that this is the bone room, or this is Chase, or this is just the environment of the place. And we would just think about that and make sounds that would go to that. And so the composition was mostly in the editing. We knew where in an area most sounds would go. But then very much like Musique Concrète, which was famous in Paris for a couple of decades. It was made kind of like found sound edited, as opposed to here's a middle, beginning, and end to a piece of music. And then there are a lot of sounds that I made in my studio that then got added later. The stinger, and various crashes and things like that are things that I had done. And a silly side note: when we first enter the house and Bill Vale's about to get it, we hear animal sounds. And I would just bring Toby stuff, and he'd think of a way to use it. That's how the stinger I had created it. And then he thought of a way to use the stinger, and it ended up being featured, in the most critical moments in the film. But this scene I'm talking about, the animal sounds, are actually my father. There's a pig, and you hear a cow, and that was all. I recorded my father at his house, or at the house I grew up in. And
has anybody ever asked for a soundtrack album of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Plenty, lots. It's
the only Texas Chainsaw product I've never heard anybody refer to.
It's beloved, and maybe someday one will appear.
All right. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
This has been a wonderful insight into the film.